Hello, good evening. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, Bwana Kariuki.
Good evening.
Okay, thank you, everyone. It's nice to have you here. Thanks for joining us for this session. We are very excited to have it in 2020. It's a very important function to us at ELNET. And this year has had so many uncertainties, but we were still hoping to have it, and we are glad that we are having it today. And we are happy that you have decided to join us. So my name is Kariuki. I work at ELNET. ELNET is Ethical Leadership Network. It is a network of leaders who believe in ethics. So if you believe in ethics, you are in the right place. And in case you don't, you are also in the right place because you get to interact with the people who believe and who can convince you that indeed it is. Yeah, thank you for recording. So maybe I want to give a chance to one of us to welcome us, each one of us is here, and to make a few remarks. But before that, I just once again say that we are very glad to host you and even to host Reverend Oginde, who has given us his time and coming to share with us his experience and also on this important topic of ethical leadership through crisis. So without saying too much, I want to invite my brother Moses, who will say a little and then he will invite our speaker. So Bwana Moses.
Thank you, Bwana Kariuki. I'm Moses Mukira, as Mr. Kariuki has indicated or has said. I'm saved. I love the Lord, my Savior. I'm glad to be here this evening, and I welcome you once again to this session, the keynote session, where we'll have our panelists, Reverend Dr. David Oginde is going to make the opening remarks for this session. Then we'll have more sessions to come. We'll have the governance session tomorrow with an offshoot subtopic, see on ethics and crisis. Then we'll have the next week, we'll have the business and mentoring sessions. So you are all welcome to those sessions. But today we are concentrating on the keynote address by Reverend Dr. David Oginde. In our society, in Kenya especially, we might have given up on ethics or living righteously. But as some of us can testify or can attest, it is actually possible in Kenya to live righteously, ethically, and to earn a just living. And the onus is on each and every one of us to do their part to earn a just living, to promote justice and ethics, and to live righteously. If I may quote from Proverbs chapter 29 and verse 2, it says, when the righteous thrive, the people rejoice, but when the wicked rule, the people groan. So we should not be looking for righteous leaders. It is us who are supposed to be righteous and thrive. Then we'll collectively be glad, we rejoice. So don't look for righteous leaders, look for righteous populace, and you automatically get righteous leaders. So, as I said, speaker this evening is Bishop David Oginde, the former presiding bishop for Crisis Answer Ministries, that is CITAM, and also the current Chancellor for Pan-African Christian University, that is PAC. We might be familiar, most of us might be familiar with Bishop Dr. Oginde. And if you're not, then you might be familiar with Hope FM or Hope TV or CITAM. On top of his official duties, Bishop Oginde is also involved in shaping opinion nationally in our country as far as governance and leadership is involved in our country. I'm sure you have heard him comment or take a position on various issues affecting our country with regard to leadership and governance. So without further ado, let me welcome Bishop Oginde to make his remarks. Bishop Oginde, please welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much for welcoming me to this, and thank you for inviting me to be part of this great conference and to speak on a topic that I'm sure is relevant to many of us. Thank you very much. I will share a PowerPoint, if that is okay. You can see?
Yes, we can see.
Yes, we can.
Thank you. So I was asked to speak on ethical leadership through crisis. Very interestingly, I was invited to another group meeting of one of our national parastatals this morning to speak on the same topic. I found that a great coincidence, worded exactly the same: ethical leadership in times of crisis. So perhaps some of you are even in that meeting. So this may be a blessing that you hear it twice in a day. Ethical leadership, a very important subject, a very important issue, especially in times of crisis. The crisis that right now is in the minds of everybody is the COVID-19, which has really brought the whole world to its knees. All nations alike, and it's affecting everybody. And so the first thing is really to face the reality of this crisis that we are in right now, and which is challenging every leader. A UNDP report recently commented that the COVID-19 pandemic is far more than a health crisis. It is affecting societies and economies at the core. While the impact of the pandemic will vary from country to country, it will most likely increase poverty and inequalities at a global scale. This disruption has resulted in one of the most challenging times for leaders in almost every sphere of human existence. That's the challenge that we are facing in every sphere as leaders. Whether that leadership is in the smallest unit of the home, or that leadership is at a national level, the president, as you have seen, different countries grappling with this particular challenge. It is something that is affecting us at every level of leadership. That includes the home. As I said, you have heard of domestic violence, where people who are living together in harmony pre-COVID and presumed harmony suddenly found themselves in the same house 24 hours a day, and they did not know how to just survive together. And so there was a lot of domestic violence, disruptions within the home, and many other things that happened during that time. And so this is a challenge that has affected almost every leader in every sphere. Leaders in business, in government, and other spheres face unprecedented challenges that call for astute leadership. It is in moments of disruption like this, moments of crisis, that the true mettle of a leader is tested and proved. I want to say that almost anybody can provide leadership when everything is okay. I compare it to driving. Many of us can drive on a smooth, nice road. But when it comes to a road that is rough, that is muddy, very few of us know how to maneuver a vehicle in a muddy road, especially when it is sloping, either upwards or downwards. The sides are gorgeous. I have seen people struggle. But the same drivers can do very well when they are on a smooth, nice tarmac road. So leadership is also tested in times like this, when there's a crisis that we are facing. I want to use what I call the tale of two houses. Jesus gave the tale of two houses, what we would call in Christian circles the parable of two builders. And the Bible tells us that there were these two builders who set about putting up their houses. And interestingly, when they put up these houses, each of them looked quite okay. Each stood strong, majestic, and magnificent during the time they were built. Each one of these builders had put in the resources that they had, put up a very nice building, and they finished their work. But then the Bible says the rain came, the floods flowed, and what happened? One house came down with a third and was swept by the floods. It could not stand the crisis of the rains, the floods, the storms. It just was swept away by these floods. On the other hand, the other house stood majestic and solid to the very end. And we ask ourselves, what was the difference? Jesus gives us in that parable the answer to that question. It had to do with the foundation. It was not what was visible. It was not the finishes. It was not the colors. It was not the materials used for building. It was not how well it was designed or done. The issue was the foundation upon which each house was standing. One of the houses, Jesus says, was standing on a rock. The other house was standing on sand. And so the one that was on the rock remained solid and steady, even though the floods came against it. The other house, which was standing on sinking sand, when the floods came, it was swept down the river, down the floods, and taken away. Therefore, foundations become a very important thing in a similar way for leadership, because any organization or any leadership that is going to stand must have foundational values. Let me just pause here and request whether I could be moved from being, what do you call it, administrator, admin, so that I don't receive all these requests for entry. Thank you very much.
Okay, but there are other people at the meeting, so you don't have to admit anyone.
Yeah, but it pops on the screen, sometimes covering my...
Okay.
Yes. Thank you, thank you. So, in times of crisis, leaders are faced with an enormous test on foundational issues. What will make a leader stand or continue to lead in times of crisis is really the foundation upon which they have built their own lives or their leadership, and upon the even for the organization. How a leader responds to a crisis will reveal to us the foundational values and convictions upon which his or her leadership is built. This is also true for organizations. Research has shown that crisis is also a test to the organization. A crisis will test and reveal the foundation upon which the organization is built. So it will stand or be completely affected depending on the foundation upon which that organization is built. The better prepared an organization is, the more likely it is to survive a crisis or even possibly prosper from it. We have seen organizations that during a crisis situation, everybody rallies together, and if there's good leadership, because of that crisis and the teamwork that develops around it, by the end of the crisis, the team is better organized, the team is more united, and the organization is at a better level because of the way they were able to handle that particular crisis. In some organization, obviously, crisis brings about just a crash, people fighting one another, and things happen in such a way that they bring the organization down. The implication, therefore, is that to survive a crisis, both the organization and the leader must have very solid foundational values. No individual, family, community, or nation has ever risen to greatness without a sound moral ethic. That you can test it across the world, not an individual. If an individual doesn't have sound moral values, if a family doesn't have sound moral values, if a community doesn't have sound moral values, or even a nation, they cannot rise to greatness. They will be definitely brought down. The Bible is clear that righteousness exalts a nation, but sin is a reproach to any people. And we can say righteousness exalts an organization, righteousness exalts an individual, righteousness exalts a leader, but sin is a reproach to any people. A careful study of the successful nations such as Singapore, Malaysia, Japan, much of Europe and North America reveals that these nations have got to where they are today because they as a people chose to embrace some basic moral values that have guided their social, economic, and political intercourse. In fact, if you read the story of a country like Singapore, in the early days when they were setting up, they were just as corrupt as we are. But the leader put in such measures that any person who was found in corruption, them were shot dead. Even close friends were taken into prison, some of them for life imprisonment. There was no mercy. And people began to toe the line. And that is how nations like this have grown into where they are, whereas they were with us, like Singapore was, we are told, was at the same level with Kenya when they started this kind of movement. So when people give themselves to serious moral values, it just brings about certain growth. And this is the foundation for integrity. Moral values, the foundation of integrity. What is integrity? Janet Hagberg defines integrity as a quality or state of being of sound moral principle, honest, sincere, and upright. It is also a quality of being complete, whole, sound, and impaired. It is all about character. In other words, a man or woman of integrity, whether you are a leader or not, it means that you have certain sound principles that guide your life. If you look in the scriptures again, you find a young man like Joseph. Joseph was a young man taken or sold into slavery by the brothers. And he found himself in the house of Potiphar, where he had been sold into slavery. And the woman of the house decided that she was going to have him go to bed with her. Joseph refused, and she insisted, and finally she grabbed or reached out to grab Joseph. Joseph ran away, having told this woman, "How can I do such a thing and sin against my God?" That is a powerful statement because it tells you that this young man, Joseph, was a man of character, so that it did not matter where he was. He knew there are certain things that you just do not do, no matter what the consequences. So he would rather run away naked than to compromise his moral values. What is the nature of character? Character is what we do when no one is looking. Character is about who you are when no one is looking. Many of us do very good things when we are in public, when we are in a place where we are being seen. But when we are on our own, where no one is looking, some of the things that we do are quite questionable. Bill Hybels says that character is not the same as reputation. Reputation is what people think of us. You know, somebody may look at you or hear about you or listen to you or observe you and think you're a great man or you're a great person. But that could be just an external public reputation. Character is also not the same as success. There are many successful people, many successful leaders, but who have poor character. They just do not live according to the moral ethic or integrity. So you can be a very successful person with lots of achievements, and you know some of such people who then you hear the things that they have done, and you just get you to wonder how any person who has reached that level of success could actually do what they are accused to do. In the same way, character is finally but who we are. It is the inner being of an individual. It is that moral tenacity that is found within a person, the principles that guide and guard the life of an individual. So that it doesn't matter where a person is, where the person finds themselves, they will live according to the beliefs that they have, the convictions that they have about their moral values. how does character play out in leadership? My observation is that more people have failed in life and in leadership due to deficiency in character than to insufficiency of skills. There are many people who are highly skilled, highly intelligent, highly endowed with wisdom, but fail in their leadership simply because of deficiency in character. And so if we are going to be successful in leadership, especially in times of crisis, we must have character. These are founded on the values that we have. Now, values are defined as those long-lasting beliefs that represent what the organization considers to be important. They define what is right or wrong, good or bad. Almost every organization has what we call core values. And these are supposed to represent what we believe in as an organization. They're supposed to represent what we hold dear. They also define what is right, wrong, good, or bad within organizations. And therefore, the organizational members are supposed to live by these values. For that to happen, there must be shared value among the organizational members, because every one of us comes into an organization with our own personal values, things that we hold dear, things that we believe in, ways that we do our work, how we interact with people, how we look at our things, our worldview that has been shaped perhaps by our experiences or our backgrounds. But when we come into an organizational setting, for us to be able to succeed, we must have a shared value in terms of how we work together as a team and as members of that organization. These shared values then become very important in guiding how any organization therefore operates. Now, I've talked about core values. There are two sets of values that you'll find in an organization. They are what we call the espoused values. These are the desired values. Then there are enacted values. Enacted values are the values that are in use. Now, there is always a dichotomy. There is always a struggle between the espoused values and the enacted values, the values that we believe in and the values that we live by. And I think Paul brings out this struggle very well in Romans chapter 7, from verse 15 to 19. And basically what he says there, that I find a law working within me, that the good that I know I should do is not what I do. But the evil that I know I should not do, that is what I find myself doing. And he says, this is a struggle in me, how I do not live by what I know is right. And I'm sure many of us can testify of that. You know what is right to do, but you end up doing the opposite. You know that this is not right to do, but that is what you end up doing. And this struggle is given to us in Romans chapter 7. If you read it, it is so practical, it is so real. And Paul cries out and says, wretched man that I am, who will deliver me from this body of death? This struggle that I have within me. And many of us can testify that we have that struggle. It is not that we don't know what the right thing to do. It is not that we do not know that this is wrong and should not be done. But somehow we end up doing the wrong that we know we should not do, and we fail to do the right which we are supposed to do. So this struggle then comes into the organizational setting where the espoused values, which I call values on the wall, The espoused values remain hanging on the wall, beautifully framed. If you go to many houses, or not houses, but offices, you will see these core values nicely framed, hanging at the reception area, hanging in the CEO's office, and hanging in many other offices. These are our values. The espoused values establish the public image desired by corporate leaders. Espoused values, however, do not represent the actual culture of an organization. So you'll find, for example, an organization, one of them, which is very common among in core values, is excellence. And so we say one of our core values is excellence. But then when you see how they deliver services, when you see the kind of goods that they give to you, and you look at the kind of services they offer to you, how they treat their customers, and you wonder, where is the excellence in this? Because this was a desire. This is something that we put out there for people to see, but somehow we end up not doing it. Then there's what I call values in the heart, the enacted values. Values in the heart are the values that are actually in practice or being used in the workplace. When you go to an organization and you see how they treat customers, you see how the kind of quality they give in their products, it tells you that is their value proposition. It is not what is hanging on the wall, it is what they are giving you, how they are treating you, and all that. Tell you, this is how much we value you. So enacted values guide individual behavior and decisions in the workplace, especially in times of crisis. Crisis tends to bring out the worst or the best in us. Because in crisis time, people forget about acting. People become real. And it is at that point when you will know what kind of values are guiding organizational members within a context, within an organization, within an institution, within a home. When crisis comes, the enacted values, the values in the heart, then come out, they pop out immediately. For leaders, when we get into the space of enacted values versus espoused values, there is what we call, or what I call, leadership dissonance. Leadership dissonance leads to a serious lack of authenticity. Why? Because the convictions and the practice are completely different. Like we would say in biblical language and theological language, the orthodoxy and the orthopraxis are totally different. What we believe and what we actually do are totally different. So this leadership dissonance comes or occurs when there is a dichotomy between personal conviction and actual behavior. I believe that I should drink water only, but in practice, I take a glass of wine. When I'm with people, I take water. When I am alone, I take wine. Peter, because we are in a Christian context in ELNET, I could use more biblical examples. The Apostle Peter found himself in this kind of a situation where his conviction and his behavior were at dissonance. Peter had been put into that place where Jesus revealed to him that even though the Jews had previously looked down upon and message, the gospel was purely for the Jews, the religion was for the Jews. But now, under the new gospel, the New Testament, everybody had been brought in, even the Gentiles. So Peter found himself, when he was in public with other Jews, he separated himself from the Gentiles. But when he was alone, he was quite happy to embrace the Gentiles. That is what we call a leadership dissonance, when your beliefs and your behavior are at cross purpose. There's a dichotomy in there. In times of crisis, I find that many leaders fall into what I call the expediency trap. The end justifies the means. This is a Machiavellian kind of approach to values. Machiavelli argued that true virtue is accomplishing one's goals or ends on behalf of one's constituents, no matter the means. In other words, when you find yourself in a situation, your first priority is to deliver for your constituents. So it does not matter what means you use to achieve that goal, provided that finally you deliver for your constituents. And that's where the phrase came from, the end justifies the means. I call it the expediency trap. This happens especially in times of crisis, where you want things to move quickly, you want things to be done in an effective manner, you want to deliver for your people, you want to meet your goals and objectives, but there is a crisis, there's trouble, and so you use whatever methods, even the methods that you know for sure this is not right, but because it is going to give us a positive outcome, then I can follow it. That is what we call the expediency trap that many leaders find themselves in, following in times of crisis. Mark Gregory Burns says it is not just the end that must be good, but also the means to reaching those ends. In other words, no matter what happens, we must not just focus on delivering to our constituents, but we must deliver in an ethical manner. And so a leader must make sure that within their organization, within their team, the processes that are followed are ethical. They do not circumvent our values that we hold dear. The way we have set ourselves must be adhered to, so that the process itself and the end also are both moral in nature. One of the challenges of a receding economy is the fact of severe competition that ensues from across the globe. Therefore, in such times, there's real temptation to overstate the qualities and values of products and services. And we have seen this, especially during this COVID situation. You find that people sell you substandard goods simply because the supply is limited. And so they can sell you very substandard goods, and they can give you substandard services because perhaps they're the only ones offering that service. Every other business is closed or has gone down under. During crisis, there's temptation to underpay and overwork employees, because in any case, where can they go? There are no jobs. You can easily tell them, if you can't work, you're free to leave, because you know there's nowhere they're going to go. It is also a time when you can be tempted to overlook or circumvent national or international standards of practice, again, because we are in a time of crisis. This puts a big test on our ethics and morality as leaders. The reality is that values and ethics have become a major focus of organizational behavior in today's business environment. With the emerging trend of transparency and accountability, ethical practice is a prerequisite to any serious organization that seeks to compete in the global or local scene. I normally tell people that you can only deceive people for a while. Even if you are a monopoly, Somebody is preparing somewhere, and they're going to become your competitor. And so if you cannot be ethical in the provision of your services, if you cannot be accountable in the products that you give, then you are going to find yourself driven out of business, because these are some of the things that people are looking for in this competitive environment. So what is our leadership task? Our leadership task, therefore, is in any organization, we must define our values and shape our culture. We must build a strong foundation that can get us to the top, no matter what the circumstances. Therefore, we must move from espoused values to enacted values within the culture of the organization. In fact, preparation for a crisis does not happen at the time of crisis. Remember the parable of the two houses, the tale of the two houses. It is not when the rains came and the storms came and the floods came that these people were building their foundations or taking care of their buildings. That was taken care of long before that the rains came. And the person who was wise, the wise builder, anticipated that there would be a time when rains will come, floods will come, things will come that will shake my building. And so they put their foundation upon a rock. The time to prepare for a crisis is not in the time of crisis. The time to put in place values and integrity and all those things that make for morality and ethical leadership is not at the time of crisis. They must be built within the culture of the organization. They must be built within the culture and lives of the individual members. They must be built within the lives of the leader, so that by the time a crisis comes, you are like that house, you remain standing. So how then do we build our structure for leadership in crisis? Number one, a commitment to integrity. This calls for transparency in all that we do. We must operate above board in everything that we do. We must allow for external scrutiny of processes and transactions. It means that we do not go into underhand deals. We must make necessary disclosures. We must communicate our decisions in a transparent manner. We must comply with the legal requirements within our sector of operation. Let me pause here and just give a personal testimony of the importance of transparency. Up to last Saturday, I was the presiding bishop of CITAM, Crisis the Answer Ministries. One of our core values is transparency. And how do we practice this? We practice this through the reports that we give, operations above board, accountability one to another. And because of this compliance and the things that we do, which are simply part of our culture. About 2 years ago, we received a call from the Kenya Revenue Authority. And we were told that the commissioner of taxes wants to come and visit our office. When you hear the taxman coming to your home or your office, it is a scary thought. So we wondered what we may have done that would cause the whole commissioner to come. But they told us they're coming in good faith. So anyway, we have had KRA people visiting us all the time, but we have never had the commissioner herself come. So when the commissioner came, they said they had actually come to give us a commendation as being the best taxpayer within our sector as a non-governmental, non-profit organization. In other words, all the non-profit organizations NGOs and all churches and other organizations, we were considered as among the best taxpayers within that time. That surprised us because we are a very small organization. Secondly, we have never set out to compete and be a high-level taxpayer, but simply we are faithful in remitting all the requirements that are expected of us as an organization. And this is what caught the attention of KRA to come and give us that commendation. It was such a pleasant surprise. But I realized that when you operate with integrity and transparency, it actually lifts the organization into higher levels. When you deal with things underhand and below the table, it brings the organization down. And so transparency is very critical for any organization that wants to compete in the market. How do you test your transparency? Ask yourself, how transparent are your corporate operations? How transparent are your corporate operations? Do you deal with things above board? That's a question you can ask yourself. Are leaders and team members' actions readily verifiable by internal and external audit? If we are audited, whether as individual members of the team or as leaders in the organization, can we be found to be above board? Is transparency applicable to everyone, or is it just for the lower cadre of staff, while the top management, the CEO, the directors are not subjected to such things as transparency tests? That is a way to find out how transparent you are. The second one is accountability. Accountability establishes answerability or liability. In other words, every member of the organization is answerable for their actions, are liable for everything that they do. It ensures responsibility to someone, that everybody in the organization is responsible to somebody else. There's nobody who is a lone ranger who is floating, whether it is a top CEO or it is a leader of a department or an individual member of the organization. They are responsible to somebody. It enforces responsibility for actions so that everybody is responsible for whatever action that they take. This helps with accountability within the organization. And it helps, especially now when it comes to times of crisis, people know that whatever I do, I am responsible for my actions to somebody else. So to lead in crisis, to be ethical in every place where you find yourself, we must build trust through personal attribute. Every leader must have personal attributes that help them to remain ethical in every place where they find themselves. Let me share 4 of them. One is confidence. A person, a leader, an individual must have confidence, what we call self-confidence. Why is confidence so important in ethical, moral leadership? Because if you look carefully, you'll find that many of the things that we do or people do have to do with trying to build a self-image. You find the people who engage in corruption. What is the driving force? They want to make money easily, quickly. Why do they want to make money easily, quickly? They want to live a good life. They want to live in the right place. They want to have the nice house. They want to have a nice car. They want, so that people can say, wow, you are really moving ahead. In our Christian context, we say you are really blessed. So that is what they gain as satisfaction. When you see me with a brand new car that is very expensive, and you just say, wow, that is excellent. That is the satisfaction. So because we want these good things, and because we know that our resources cannot buy for us these things, that's why we take shortcuts. That's why we steal money from our companies. That's why we steal money from government. That's why we engage in corruptions. So when people want to make money, it tells you that their self-worth is within what they own. Their self-worth is built around what they own or what they look like or how people see them. But when a person is self-confident, then it does not matter what people think about them. If you will find that people who are truly successful in the right way, you will meet them on the street, you would not even know. They could be walking around in a t-shirt. They could be going around in simple jeans. And when you are told who that person is, you say, wow, I wouldn't expect such a person to be dressed that way. Because for them, their self-worth is not bound by the things or in the things that they have, the property they own, or the clothes they wear, or the car they drive, or where the children go to school. Their self-worth is in themselves. And for us Christians, our self-worth is in God. So confidence is so important for fighting off any kinds of evil behavior or conduct. Number two is competence. Competence, when a person is not competent in their field, that's why they will take shortcuts. When you get into a field where you are not good at, then you end up taking shortcuts, doing things in ways that are not the right way, because you want to do to deliver this product, deliver this service, but you just do not have the competence to deliver it. So you give us substandard goods, you give us substandard products. Competence. But when you are competent in your field, then you deliver quality. And that in itself is an act of integrity. Number three is courage. Courage is critical for ethical leadership. Why is courage important? Because as a leader, you will be faced with or by circumstances that require you or demand of you to compromise your values, to do things that you know are wrong. What is going to help you to say no to that kind of a situation is courage. Sometimes it is your senior who is asking you to do something, and you know this is wrong. This is against company policy. This is against the laws of God. This is against the laws of the land. And so how then do you tell your senior that I'm not going to do this? It requires courage. It requires wisdom. And so courage will help you in remaining ethical. That's why Joseph could stand before this woman who was her boss and say, I cannot do such a thing. That's why Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego could stand before the king and say, "O king, this we are not going to do. Even if you throw us in the fire, we are ready to burn, but we are not going to bow." Courage, very important for ethical living and leadership. The last one I share with us is consistency. Integrity, ethical living and leadership is not an event that I am just ethical today. You must be consistently moral. You must be consistently ethical. You must practice integrity in a consistent manner, so that whichever place you find yourself, whether it is in a small thing or a big thing, you are consistent. You stand for your values. You are principled in the way you do things. I compare it with muscles, you know, for those of us who are men. If you want to grow your muscles, you do not go to the gym once and then suddenly you have biceps and triceps. You keep going, you keep at it, and they grow ever so slowly, frustratingly so. And therefore, if you are going to be an ethical leader, you must be consistent, and it starts with small things. Those of us who are working in offices, are you carrying home the office stationery? If you cannot be faithful with office stationery, how can you be faithful with 10 million? You cannot suddenly be faithful, because if you are faithful in little, you say no to taking a pen of the office home. You say no to carrying papers home or envelopes. You say no to this. Then that will grow into other bigger things, computers and things and monies and so on that are entrusted to you. You use them ethically. And as you do this ever so slowly, you overcome the challenge that we talked about earlier, about the tug of war within you that keeps forcing you or requiring you or demanding of you to compromise your life. So those are the 4 attributes that I would share. There are several others, but I just thought this would be critical for us. So crisis, in my view, is a leadership moment. The COVID-19 crisis provides us a unique leadership moment to everyone holding any position of responsibility. It is a time to show that we are men and women of integrity. God bless you, and thank you very much. Amen.
Wow, thank you so much, Bishop Oginde, for the wonderful presentation on ethical values, ethical leadership, and integrity, especially in a time of crisis. We are very honored to hear from you, and I believe all of us are very much blessed. Yeah, so at this moment, I want to invite Dr. Jane Rose Kibara, who will take us through a session of question and answer. So if you have a through her, alternatively, you can type your question on the chat section and it will be answered.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kariuki. Thank you, Bishop Oginde, for great presentation. We really appreciate. And I'll kick off this session with a question to Bishop. And I would like it's a question related to an observation. Our dear country, Kenya, is actually, we can say, it's lacking in ethical related principles. It's not lacking, actually. It's not lacking in literature that is related to ethics. In other words, we have so much information that is related to ethics. It's taught in schools, it's taught in workshops at senior management levels for those people who are in leadership. But then we have a challenge in implementation of the same, because so many things are actually going wrong. This evening, I was looking at a report written by the European Journal of Business and Strategic Management. And the observation was that as our country is low in the judicial process, the political interests are very high, especially in the fight against corruption. We have a very weak legal framework. We have a slow process of implementing the Auditor General's reports, for example. We have lack of prosecution powers by EACC, lack of, seriousness in sentencing corrupt individuals, especially those corrupt at very high levels. We know we are able to prosecute people who have, committed small crimes, but those big crimes, they tend to go scot-free. So we can say that there's also lack of integrity by the Kenyan elect leaders. This report actually says the same. So my question to you, Bishop, is, what could be done to rectify the situation? Because we don't want to give up. What can we do? And then the second question, what is the real problem, really? Because we have so much information, just as I mentioned earlier, there's so much information regarding the same. What is the problem? Then the second question, what can we do? Because we'll not let our country go down the drain like that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do I go ahead and answer?
Please do. Thank you.
Okay. That's a good question that Jen Rose has brought up. Most likely all of us are Kenyans, or majority of us are, and this is very true. It is not lack of knowledge. It is not lack of information that is causing our country to be as corrupt as it is. When you do not punish evil, it can only grow. Evil is like a weed. When you do not remove it in good time, I don't know why, but you realize that weeds grow better than crops. The weeds somehow tend to do very well in any context than the actual crop that you planted. So you need to remove the weeds early enough so that the crops can grow. If you don't do that, then they can only get worse. So part of our is exactly what you're saying, that we do not punish, we do not deal with acts of corruption in good time. Two things I would say. One is that as a citizen, I know that government, we blame government all the time. Even Jen Rose's question is, why don't we punish and so on? My question is, who is corrupt? Who is corrupt? I'll give you an example. Before I give the example, I would say that unless and until Kenyans, ordinary Kenyans, get tired of corruption, corruption will not go away from this country. Until we as Kenyans get tired of corruption, corruption will not die. Why do I say so? Two examples. One is that we know individuals who, this person is a civil servant, or this person working in such and such a company or organization, you know that their salary cannot afford the kind of life that they are living. And yet we celebrate these people. We elect them into positions of leadership simply because they have the money. So when I go home and I have a big car and my children are going to a big school and all that kind of thing, I am celebrated. Nobody raises a question as to where did I get my resources. So it encourages other people to do likewise. So it perpetuates. But if we as citizens were to refuse that kind of a thing, then this will begin to die down. One time I was driving, or not driving, but I took a matatu from Kisumu. I was going home. And we were actually with my sister, follower, in the matatu. This is the time when the Mishuki rules had just been put in place. So matatus were to carry a maximum of, I think, 14 people, nobody standing, and so on. And so we got this matatu going to Busia. We got in, took our seats. Only like 200-300 meters down the road, it stops, picks a person. The person enters, is squeezed at the back. We go another 500 meters, it stops, picks another person. Near the airport, for those of you who are familiar with Kisumu, just about, say, 3 or 4 kilometers from the city center, we find police officers. And the conductor comes out, you can see he has given something to the police officer, gets back into the car, we drive off. And they keep picking people. So finally they had filled the spaces at the back. And the next place where the next person was to sit was where we were sitting with my sister. And I told this conductor, you are not going to put a person here. You know what you're doing is illegal. It is wrong. You're not supposed to overload. You're not supposed to put too many people. And he said, wewe, kama unataka, ungekuja na gari yako. You know, the normal way my numbers. I said, no, you are not going to put anybody here. We drive a short distance. He stops, sees somebody. This person is trying, it was a young lady trying to get in. I slapped this lady, I'm sorry to say. I told her, can't you see that this thing is full? Where are you going? She was very shocked. The conductor was equally shocked. And they said they are now going to remove me. I said, no way. I paid my money. I'm going where I'm going. You know this is wrong, and we are not going to move from here. They said, if we are not going to add more people, we are not going. I said, no problem. And we refused to move. It was at that point that the rest of the passengers now joined me. All this time, the only person who was supporting me was my sister. The rest of the people were quiet as people squeezed them. So it is when I raised my voice and refused to allow any person to enter. That's when the other passengers now joined. Yeah, ni kweli, you know, you can't bring any other person. So they finally said, if that's the case, we are leaving you here. We are going to get you into another matatu. We are going back to Kisumu. We'll pick somebody. I said, no problem. They dumped us in Maseno and put us in another matatu. When we started with this one, they started playing the same game. I said, you know, the reason we were dropped there is because we had refused. Nobody should enter in this matatu when it is full. And we went all the way. Nobody entered. If Kenyans can take their stand against corruption, we don't need anti-corruption commission, we don't need anti-corruption court, because the people who corrupt are ourselves. We are the ones who corrupt these people. So that's a long answer to your short question, Jen Rose. What can we do? Do whatever you can in whichever place you can. Those of us who can mobilize a movement against unethical practices, let us mobilize those movements so that we can stop these things. If we keep looking at the people who are corrupt themselves to fight corruption, I wish you well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bishop, for that elaborate answer. Indeed, unless us Kenyans rise and say no to corruption, we cannot fight corruption. I agree with you totally. And we all need to stop corruption. It starts with me and you. So I really, really appreciate that. We need a movement against corruption. And that's the only way we can secure our country from this beast of corruption. Thank you very much. Very well said, Bishop. Now it's time for us to ask Bishop questions that we have. You can put them in the chat or you can ask him directly. Please, the floor is open for you. Thank you.
No more questions?
Okay, Bishop, I think mine is more of a comment. I almost asked a question, but towards the end, you kind of answered. I really struggle with the issue of corruption in our country, wondering what is the solution? And I know that it starts with me by doing the right thing and saying no to corruption. But my question has been, is it enough? Is it enough? I have a friend, I saw him making a very interesting argument on Facebook. He was saying that he was so frustrated that we elect bad leaders. And he was saying how for many years, he has tried to elect the correct people, the people who should be in leadership, but it has never worked because the majority, he was calling them fools. he was saying the votes are so many, so that my one good vote does not count. So he was even suggesting that he was saying, we wise people or smart people, our vote should be equal to like 100 votes so that it can actually count. And I could feel the frustration that a few people doing the right thing, it's like it's not enough. Maybe now I am happy about that last point where you're saying a movement. If we can be able to mobilize others and who are doing, we influence, like I influence 5 people around me, 10 people around me. If you see the wrong thing, say no. Maybe a movement will work. But I agree that it starts with me as an individual. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Karaoke, for those remarks. I have one question in the forum, and I would like to read it aloud for the bishop. What position of the church in fundraising where politicians are invited or other guests with unclear sources of income? Does it help to reduce corruption or enhance it? To you, Bishop. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I don't know what we mean by soliciting, because there are 2 ways in which a church can get its money. One is by offerings, which are unsolicited, and then usually at fundraisings where people come to give or contribute towards a project that the church may be involved in. Now, when it comes to issues like offerings, other than in a few places where offerings are declared, we do not know where people get who gives and how much they give and where they got it from. So we simply pass around the bag. There are prostitutes putting in their money there. There could be, whoever. So we give thanks and sanctify the resources for God's use. But God knows where each and every person has got their monies from. So that is one way. The other one is, of course, where if you, for example, invite an important person, as it were, to come and lead a funds drive, then of course you would have to check the integrity or know the integrity of that person and what where they could have got their money from. And it is up to you as leadership, therefore, to determine what kinds of persons could you or should you invite to a fundraising event. And that really every church leader should take responsibility so that they are not inviting a person simply because they have monies, but because they are men or women of integrity, people that we can tell where they get their resources from. And so it is an accountability issue. And for me, I would say every church leader should be careful where they get their monies from and who they invite to give those monies. It is a matter of integrity that each one of us must be accountable to God for.
Thank you, Bishop, for that good response. I believe the question is actually quite well answered. I'll take in one more question. And okay, I can see there are 2 questions. And then okay, 3, they are coming in. I'll read 5 questions, the first 5 questions. Then Bishop, you can respond to them. Does a nation like Kenya need foundation values? The BBI proposed 13 of these foundation values or pillars and doctrines. Yeah, what is your take on the irregularities emerging in the American elections? The evidence seems overwhelming, but the mainstream media like CNN are ignoring to cover it. That's question number 2. Number 3, 2 questions for the Bishop. What is the role of the church in this fight And how effective are we? The second part reads, for the sake of the future generations, is there anything we can do in the school curriculum? Actually, I'll read, I think the next one is a comment. I'll just read it and hand over to you, Bishop. Hi, Bishop. There is this verse in the Bible that says the things that I don't want to do are the things I do. And the things that I do are the things that I do. What drives us to do that? That's okay. That's from Barak. The final question, they're still coming. How should we practice ethics in giving? Thank you. Over to you, Bishop.
Wow, those are many questions. Those are many questions. Let me start with Barak, which is easy because we already talked with it. I talked about it rather in the beginning. You remember I mentioned Romans chapter 7, which is where that comes from. The struggle between what I know is right to do, I do not do, and the things I know are wrong to do. Those are the things that I end up doing. So that is a struggle that I addressed earlier. I hope the person was here when we talked about it. It's a human struggle. And as I said when I talked about it, is that you have to begin to overcome that struggle in small things. And it is as you overcome, I call it the principle of small wins. When you overcome in small things, when you refuse in small things, then you are able to refuse bigger things. Let me use again the story of Daniel and the other three friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. When they got into Babylon and they were recruited into Nebuchadnezzar's school or university to learn, the life and culture of the Chaldeans to be leaders in his government. When the food was brought, they refused to eat that food because they knew that it was offered to idols. And so they made it clear right from the beginning, we are not going to eat this food. So that is what I call a small win. It was not a big thing in our eyes as we see it today, but it was a matter of principle that then laid a foundation on how they are going to conduct themselves in this foreign land, how they are going to conduct themselves within this foreign culture. So by the time now there was the bowing before the image, they had already developed that stature. They had developed within themselves that principle that they could stand before the king courageously and say, we are not going to bow. So if they had been compromising in smaller things like eating the food and so on, they would not have had what we call the moral courage to stand when now the fiery furnace was right before them. So it is important that in this struggle, it starts with small things that come your way. And when you say no to small things, it is the only way that you develop a life of principle and a life of integrity that can carry you even when you come to the bigger things in the future. But if you compromise in small things, you will not have the moral courage to confront the big things when they come to you. So that's something I'd said a little earlier. When it comes to, I can't remember all the questions, but let me talk about the US situation. When it comes to politics, it is very difficult to know where the truth lies. American politics this particular year has been very, very tricky because it has been shrouded in a lot of mystery, conspiracy theories. Even simple things like COVID-19 were all politicized. Wearing a mask was a political statement. So you really do not know where the truth lies in this particular election. And so I cannot comment confidently because I do not have facts other than what we see in the media and the our friend has rightly observed, depending on which media house you are looking at, you know, in the US, different media houses support different sides of the divide, political divide. And so you can get a very warped view of what is going on. So it is a very difficult thing to say, this is the actual fact. I do not know how anybody can possibly say that this is the actual fact, because when you listen to both sides, each seems to have the facts on their side. What I would consider unfortunate is where the church has itself found itself or allowed itself to be drawn deep into politics to the extent that it is now difficult even to know when a church leader speaks, whether they are making a political statement or they're actually speaking the voice of the oracles of God. Are they speaking on behalf of God, or are they actually making a political statement? And this is even for very senior, respectable pastors and bishops. It has been very disappointing, I must say, from where I sit. So it becomes difficult to say really where the truth in the politics of America lies. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bishop, for that great presentation. The information we've received, we are really empowered. I will now kindly request that we end this session so that we can move on. So because for the sake of time, I will hand over to Mr. Kariuki. Please, Mr. Kariuki, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jane Rose, once again for taking us through that session. And once again, I want to thank Bishop for joining us and speaking to us. And from the comments, it is clear that the impact is profound. And it is my belief that we are all going to take action at individual level to actualize this message. So before we end, I will invite our board chair, Elder John Nganga, to come and say the final words and also to maybe welcome us to join ELNET, to be part of ELNET. ELNET is open to all people who are believers and who believe in this message of ethics. So Elder John Nganga, kindly.
Yeah, I should begin by thanking the bishop. Kariuki, can you hear me?
I can hear you clearly.
So the first thing is to thank my bishop, and that was a very clear message. I think the ball is now in our court. We are more than 100 people. If each one of us, 100 of us, are going to do something about ethics, Kenya will certainly start becoming different. And thank you, Bishop, for very clear message with actionable lessons out of it. Just a quick introduction to ELNET. ELNET stands for Ethical Leadership Network. Ethical Leadership Network. Our main aim is to influence the Kenyan society to understand that, just like the bishop said, without ethics, there's no good future for our country. Our vision is, if God blesses our mission, everybody will know someone, will know a leader somewhere who is ethical. Today, young people seem to think everybody who drives a Mercedes must be corrupt. We are praying and hoping that everybody in Kenya, even if they are corrupt themselves, will know someone who is ethical. You can see we are not even too ambitious. Yes, we are not looking at everybody becoming ethical, but everybody getting to know someone who is ethical. How are we going to do that? We have divided ourselves into 3 groups. One group is concentrating on governance, the judiciary, the legislature, and the executive, looking for ways of influencing people within governance who are leading us so that they can stand on their own. There already are few people. We want to create an encouraging atmosphere that you are not alone. God is with you, number one, but there are others, like Elijah, who thought he was the only prophet that is righteous. We need to tell them they are not alone. And so we have a group that wants to work in that area. And they meet, they pray, they study, and they look for ways of influencing. For example, we meet parliamentarians to ask them to stand their ground as people of ethics. And again, I don't have enough time. I want you to go in good time. But we have a second group we call the business group. These are people who just want to influence our business sector. Most people now believe that you cannot be a businessman successful without being corrupt. So we have, under the business, set up to do three things. Number one, we have a business leaders forum once a month, where people who are ethical come together to share, how are you running your business ethically? The third Wednesday of every month, we come together. We have been doing that since about 09. So we have done it for about 10 years. Where every Wednesday we meet together and somebody shares a testimony about how they are doing. What is the aim? Creating a critical mass of business leaders who are standing with ethics and allowing other people to get to know it can be done, things can be done ethically. We want to help them to see that even if you are corrupt yourself, it's not because you cannot be ethical. That's one of the things the business people are doing. Number two, they are doing is that they would like to visit churches. We call them business and church connection, where we move from church to church. And we want to share with the business community in churches that ethics should stand there. How can you be in church and not be ethical? So you are ethical on Sunday and not ethical the rest of the week. So the business and the church and business connection its aim is to go to influence Christians who are in business and in churches. And we have been to various churches. The reason I'm sharing this is that you know how you can come in. You can come in governance to join the group. You can also join the business group and come to the third Wednesday of every month. But you can also join us to join the business and church connection. Invite us to your church or join us to visit various churches. But that area we do is that we, in other business, we are carrying out business ethical assessments. You offer your organization for us to do an independent check as to how ethical you are. If you qualify, we will place you in our website. Our website is www.elnetkenya.org. And if you go there, you will see organizations that have been independently assessed and they came out ethical. For us to call you ethical, you need to score above 80% of the people we are going to assess, to question, to regard you or assess you as ethical. Of course, it's a perception index. And we already have about 20 different organizations that have offered themselves. Again, the reason I'm telling you is so that you offer your organization over yourself, because we have two assessments. We assess the business and we assess the CEO. And both of them or one of them could actually end up ending up in our list of awardees. And the thing, that's something we really hope that those of you who have attended this meeting can check how you can participate, either as being assessed as a leader or as a business. And finally, at the business, we also want to write materials that can help encourage ethics. My final thing is the first group is called the mentoring group. Their interest is, even if the older people, the younger generation, are unethical, why can't we go to the younger people and influence them so that by the time they start working, they'll know it is possible to be ethical. So the mentoring group is moving among young people, trying to influence them and convince them it is possible to be ethical and how to go about it. I hope you join us. You can go to our website, www.elnetkenya.org, and contact us, or our contact points have been given in the chat. I want to really welcome you. Do not take too long. We'd like you to participate with us. We are a small group doing a very big task. So we need everybody who could come along. Let us pray and finish together. Lord Jesus, it is you that sent a small group of people, 12 of them, and promised them that they would move from Judea to Samaria to the uttermost parts of the earth. And they finally reached us here in Kenya. Lord, how we pray that even here, with the big problem of lack of ethics, given the assessment we are given by Transparency International, it sounds an impossibly big task. But if this small group of people start with your help and your blessing, it is possible to change the Kenyan society. Lord, we seek your help. We seek your direction. Be with us, bless us, empower us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you very much.
Wow, thank you so much. Thanks everyone for joining us. We are so honored to host you today. May God bless you.